Why, as an academic president, when you've got federal dollars that employ people at your university, would you permit a major protest against a Trump policy if you know that that's going to jeopardize federal funds? Or maybe you allow it because you don't want to so brazenly stand in the way of free speech, but you just make sure that it's not too big a protest or it's not too critical. You police speech to be on the right side of the regime. That is what happens in all of these fake democracies, and that is what's happening here. But controlling speech on campuses is not enough. Controlling and intimidating journalists is not enough. You got to go after the lawyers too. Now, maybe there's not a lot of love for lawyers in this country, but lawyers are the ones that bring the lawsuits to stop the thievery and the illegality. Lawyers are compelled by their oath to stand up for the Constitution. Putin arrested Navalny's lawyers right on the eve of Navalny's trial. In Venezuela, Maduro routinely harasses and detains lawyers.
Marjorie Taylor Greene isn't just one of the worst members of Congress. She's not just one of the most corrupt members of Congress. She is also one of the most hypocritical members of Congress. And it is that hypocrisy that came out in full force when she was confronted over one of her latest scandals, one of her latest criminal scandals that we are going to get into, and the reaction she had when she was asked about the money she is making with a certain bit of insider information. We're going to cover it all. But before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button. It goes a long way, and it really does mean a lot to me. Now, before we can get into Marjorie Taylor Greene being asked about this scandal, of course, we need a little bit of context, and we're going to get some of that from Senator Chris Murphy right here.
So I have questions about the tariff announcements today, who benefited and who made money. And this should matter to you too, because this could be an enormous scam. What we know is that about 9:30 today, Trump posts on social media that people should buy. It's a good time to buy. And then 3 hours later, guess what? He announces that there's going to be a 90-day suspension of many of the tariffs. Predictably, the market, which had been crashing, shoots up, and anyone who made investments early today likely made a lot of money. And so the question is, who close to Trump knew that he was going to suspend the tariffs? Which of his Mar-a-Lago friends or his billionaire advisors were able to capitalize on that inside information? Why did Trump send out that post to his supporters earlier in the day? The bottom line is that the chaotic nature of this tariff policy, with Trump's position changing every single hour, gives ample opportunity for any individual who has early access to information about the White House's change in position to make boatloads of money, either by investing at the right time or pulling their money out of the market at the right time. This entire White House is one giant grift. Donald Trump and his friends are in power in order to use their access to government to make money. It stinks, and we should get to the bottom of it.
There are only so many explanations for Donald Trump's tariffs. The first one is, of course, that he is a weak and insecure man pretending that he's strong. So he wants to say, look, I'm so big and tough, I can intimidate other countries even though he can't. The other explanation, of course, is that he's stupid, with the third explanation being insider trading. It's very possible that Donald Trump is skewing the markets up and down so his billionaire buddies can get even richer off their stock buybacks. That is a completely logical explanation, and it would make sense with the stock purchasing that Marjorie Taylor Greene has been doing recently. And Hakeem Jeffrey talked about the need for an investigation of that in this clip right here.
Republicans are proposing new spending for border security funding in this forthcoming budget bill. Is that something that your conference will support, that sort of security investment?
We have to look at the particulars. We believe that we need to secure the border, make sure that it is safe and strong, that the rule of law, consistent with America as a country of a nation of laws, is fully and completely implemented at the border. We believe we have a broken immigration system and we need to fix it. in a comprehensive and in a bipartisan way. And we also believe that we must always defend dreamers, farm workers, and law-abiding immigrant families and protect them from aggressive overreach by the Trump administration. Those are the principles that we have consistently articulated publicly and privately to our Republican colleagues as it relates to finding some common ground on the immigration issue.
Yes, we need to get to the bottom of this. The fact that members of Congress are able to trade individual stocks still is absolutely absurd. The way Marjorie Taylor Greene did it is the perfect explanation of why it needs to be banned. So before we get into her being asked about that, let's first take a look at an article explaining what she did. Marjorie Taylor Greene faces insider trading probe calls over stock buy. Democrats are calling for an investigation into Marjorie Taylor Greene's purchase of stocks during the recent market dip following President Donald Trump's announcement of sweeping global tariffs on April 2nd. On Thursday, Texas, Democrat Greg Kazar said, "We need an investigation into insider trading by people like Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. We need an investigation into whether any K Street lobbyists or other big firms were tipped off by Donald Trump's actions." When contacted for comment, a representative of Greene called the implication that a probe would be launched into that matter utterly absurd. Now, of course, that was only a staffer of Marjorie Taylor Greene who was asked about her corruption. What happened when Marjorie Taylor Greene was asked about how so many members of Congress get rich when they become elected officials?
How do people go to Congress and become multimillionaires in a few years on a $175,000 salary? Mr. Walter, I do not know. I haven't found that money tree up there in Washington or printing machine that they all seem to have. It's amazing, truly amazing. Yeah. Nancy Pelosi, I tell you what, supposedly she has some great stock tips. Y'all should check her out.
Now, of course, that question very clearly hits on Marjorie Taylor Greene's insider trading scandal, but unfortunately, it could be applied to so many members of Congress. The response from Marjorie Taylor Greene, though, after her blatant insider trading is so ridiculous, "Oh, you don't really know. Ooh, so many millionaires." Marjorie Taylor Greene went to Congress as a millionaire, though. By the way, from a business handed down by her father. This is someone who talks about meritocracy and DEI, but she got a handout from daddy and she's acting like she's not a Nepo baby, and that's how she made all her money. Just absolute nonsense from Marjorie Taylor Greene. Again, especially because of the blatant nature she was committing this insider trading. It couldn't be clear, and we've seen it from Marjorie Taylor Greene before. We talked about this in a previous video after she became the chairwoman of the Doge subcommittee. She bought up tens of $1,000s worth of Tesla stock. I'm only laughing because afterwards, it absolutely plummeted. Goes to show Marjorie Taylor Greene isn't smart enough to even commit insider trading. Even when she has the insider knowledge, she can't be successful. But obviously, this example with Trump was too easy for even like Marjorie Taylor Greene to screw up. It was blatant. It was clear. It is why we need an investigation into this, and of course, the corruption doesn't just stop there. Senator Chris Murphy did an even deeper dive into Donald Trump's attacks on our democracy, our institutions, our government at large, the complete corruption in his administration in this clip, right here.
Mr. President, I was sitting with the CEO of one of America's biggest and most influential companies last month, and I asked him a simple question. What could President Trump do that would be a bridge too far for you? What attack on democracy or the rule of law could Trump make that would cause you to speak up? His answer was pretty simple, and it was pretty confident. He said that if Trump were to ignore a Supreme Court ruling, that would cross the line. He was reflecting a familiar theme, that until President Trump thumbs his nose definitively at a court ruling, then his attacks on democracy are troubling but not lethal. It's normal politics up until that dramatic confrontation between the executive branch and the judicial branch, for which the Constitution, as we know, really has no prescribed remedy. And for many Americans, they may breathe a sigh of relief that America's, most influential private sector leaders would rise up to defend democracy if this confrontation that we worry about came to pass. Combined with a massive public mobilization, we could be saved. But I didn't breathe a sigh of relief. The opposite. I'm deeply worried that we have really spent little time studying the paths that democracies take when they collapse. Most of the time, there is not a singular moment when the executive dramatically seizes power. There's not normally a brazen attempt to burn down the Parliament building. No, instead, democracies die when gradually, often quietly and methodically over time, the structures that hold the executive accountable for corruption, for thievery, for wrongdoing are dismantled. Dismantled so that citizens can no longer hold the executive accountable. Dismantled so that the political opposition never has enough room to maneuver meaningfully. There are still elections. The executive doesn't try to stuff the ballot box. Occasionally at lower levels, the opposition still wins. But what happens is that those structures of accountability are either so degraded or so completely co-opted by the regime that the truth is just buried, and the political opposition loses the basic tools that it needs to win. In every democracy that stops being a democracy, then there's a familiar story. There are 4 institutions that the regime attacks, and attacks relentlessly until those structures of accountability are so disintegrated that even though elections continue to happen, the same party or the same person wins power election after election. And those 4 institutions are the press, the legal profession, universities, and the business community. If you degrade or co-opt these 4 institutions, you never need to have a high-stakes fight with the top court in your country. You don't need to burn the Reichstag down. You can still have elections, but only one party will win. So that's why this CEO's assurance, frankly, sent a chill down my spine. Because our democracy isn't at risk of dying, it is dying. As we speak, we are watching it die. It is not too late to save it. Let me say that again. It is not too late to save our democracy, but we can't continue to close our eyes and think that our democracy can survive a coordinated assault on those 4 key institutions of accountability.
The corruption in Donald Trump's administration couldn't be clear. Chris Murphy outlines it all, and that clip could go on for hours, as Cory Booker did about all of the corruption, the criminality, the attacks on our democracy happening all of the time in Donald Trump's administration. But it is our job to shed light on them. It is our job to point them out. It is our job to talk about them every single day, while also offering up an aspirational vision of what our government can be. That we should ban stock trading. Senator John Oaff, who is running for re-election right now in 2021, when he just got into the Senate, introduced this bill. It is bipartisan. It should have happened a long time ago. This is the type of stuff that we need to, as Democrats, be talking about all the time. It's what we're going to be talking about on this show, certainly. And if you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button, leave a like on this video, and if you stuck around to the end, drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I'll see you soon.